All right, and welcome. Let's get started with reading The Wednesday Wars. This is one of my favorite books of all time. Now, it does take a little bit of study to be able to understand what's going on because the story takes place in 1967 in Long Island, New York. Now, back then, public school schedules allowed for religious instruction. That meant that students could go and learn about their religion by going to the churches that they attended. In Holling Hoodhood's case, this is our main character, the Catholics who went to the local Catholic church to learn how to be Catholic, and the Jewish community whose students would go to the temple to learn about their Jewish faith. And the third group were the Presbyterians, which is a Christian denomination that has its own set of beliefs, similar to those of other Christians, but different enough to be called their own religion. Holling was the only Presbyterian in his class, and unfortunately, his church did not offer any religious instruction. That means that while his classmates were out at their churches, Holling was stuck in his classroom with his teacher, learning about other stuff. Now, I don't want to ruin the surprise for you and tell you what types of things he learned on those Wednesday afternoons, but let's just say he becomes enlightened in many hilarious and serious ways. The next thing you should know about this book is that it takes place during the time of the Vietnam War. This is the principal plot line of this story. It is hinted at throughout the beginning of the book, but when you read this book titled The Wednesday Wars, you don't realize that the war in the title is talking about the Vietnam War until much later in the book. Here's a little background information on that war. The Vietnam is known as what's called a proxy war for the United States and the Soviet Union, also known as Russia. The United States and Russia were fighting in what is known as the Cold War. The US favored a democratic government and economic freedom, where Russia preferred a communist government, and ultimately their government having control over all of the economic decisions. Vietnam, unfortunately, was stuck in the middle. And even more unfortunately, it was split between the north of Vietnam, which favored Russia's politics, and the south of Vietnam, which favored the United States politics. For years, Russia and the United States utilized Vietnamese soldiers by arming them, funding their war efforts, and giving them air support so that the north of Vietnam and the south of Vietnam could fight against each other in civil war. In the early 1960s, the US started sending their own soldiers to fight, but the northern Vietnamese soldiers knew the land better and dominated the battles. It was called a senseless war because it was not winnable for the United States, and many people protested it. It was only 20 years after World War II that the Vietnam War began, and people were so tired of war that they did not want to see the world crumble again. You're going to notice a lot of the characters have different views about the Vietnam War, as did many people during the 1960s, and Holling is caught in the middle of it all. Because this book takes place in 1967, there are many characters that were famous back then that maybe you don't know about now. I'm going to give you a list of some of the people mentioned in this book so that you can have a better idea of who they're talking about. Starting off, there is Walter Cronkite. He was arguably the most famous news reporter during the 1960s. Next up, we have John Wayne. He was a famous country western movie star, typically known for his tough guy cowboy roles. Next up, we have Bing Crosby. You've probably heard him sing during Christmas time. He was a famous singer and actor, which was a rare thing to be able to do in the 1960s. You were usually either one or the other, but Bing was good at both. Next up, we have Mickey Mantle, famous center fielder for the New York Yankees. Mickey Mantle was arguably the most famous baseball player in the United States and worldwide. Why would he be so famous? Because of the Yankees' great success. They dominated baseball in the 1950s, winning the World Series in 1950, 1951, 1952, 1953, 1956, 1958, 1961, and 1962. Now, Holling, our main character, was 12 years old in 1967, which means he grew up watching the team dominate, idolizing the players, which brings us to another player on the Yankees, Joe Pepitone. He was a famous first baseman and outfielder for the Yankees during the time of this story. Alongside him, Horace Clarke, second baseman for the Yankees. They make a very memorable appearance as you read through the book, one that's both heartwarming and really cool. The last thing I want to talk about when it comes to the Wednesday Wars is the sweet treats that they liked. One in particular that comes up huge as the story is being told, especially toward the beginning. It is known as a cream puff. Now, I had to do my own research on this one because I can't say that I've ever eaten a cream puff, although they do look delicious. Here's the best way I can describe it. I think it's like a donut hole, but a little bit lighter and hollow. So what they do is they bake this light donut and then they put whipped cream inside of it and they sprinkle it with powdered sugar. I guess these were the absolute thing in the 1950s and 60s. And after doing my research, they look delicious. Hoping they make a comeback soon. All right, that should be enough background information for you to get started and know what's going on in the book. The book goes very deep into what it means to wake up and recognize the realities of the world around you. The experience of Holling in 1967 can make perfect sense to you as you read the book today. Now go get reading, and I will talk to you toward the end of the book. Enjoy the Wednesday Wars.